What the course gave me was a lot more practical support, a lot more academic rigor around it, a lot of experience from the faculty to upskill. So I certainly came out of it, I think, a much better practitioner of negotiation, mediation and tactics. I began in the city in private practice in the firm of Simmons Simmons. I spent some time with them in Hong Kong and the Middle East, always as a litigator. I became a partner there. And then in 1997, I was headhunted to join Goldman Sachs. And there I was to set up a commodities compliance desk in London, because the chap who recruited me ran the compliance globally, didn't want to move to London. The business was really starting to be centered in London, and they needed somebody on the ground. And I had a bit of experience in commodities litigation, but I was keen to learn and do something different. And of course, Goldman was a great name, so I joined them, and then did various different jobs within Goldman over the next 27 years. I stayed with them till last year, and in that time, I did compliance jobs. I joined the legal department, set up a litigation function for them, and then ended up running the firm-wide legal group across Europe and Asia. So what I've done, I've founded an organisation called Dominion Street, which provides mediation and coaching services. Mm-hmm. So on the mediation side, there's a little bit of focus on financial services, but there's also other disputes to consider. On the coaching side, I tend to focus on senior executives, senior partners in professional services firms. There's a lot of requirement for negotiating with people and mediating it in a very general sense between different interests within a firm like Goldman Sachs. There will be competing interests at different business areas, different control areas, and different ways to approach disputes, whether they be with regulators, whether they be with counterparties. And I think a lot of the skills of the mediator, particularly around coaching people in negotiation, around developing a space in which to have those conversations, I think are very important and are very much used in those situations. I suppose going back to negotiation as a sort of precursor to mediation, almost everything we do is a negotiation of some fashion, and we've been doing that since we were babies, and it's part of evolutionary psychology, I guess. And so anything that helps prepare one for dealing with a negotiation situation, resolving a situation, has got to be useful. Mm-hmm. I think I certainly did it better. I think if people are drawn to mediation training, they're probably doing a role that involves some of that already. Mm-hmm. They have an interest in it, and they probably have some skill in it already, albeit rudimentary. And I probably fell into that category. So I was interested, I was doing a bit of it, and I had some experience in it. What the course gave me was a lot more practical support, a lot more academic rigor around it, a lot of experience from the faculty to upskill. Mm-hmm. So I certainly came out of it, I think, a much better practitioner of negotiation, mediation and tactics, I think. Yeah. Globally, in industry, in politics, in society, we have a dearth of good leadership. And I don't know why that is. We've developed as a society over thousands of years, and leaders do come to the fore. Some are good, but a lot really are not. And particularly if you look in industry, there are studies to show that actually less than 50% of leaders are effective in their role and will be rolled off their roles because of that within a year or two. And I think anything we can do to improve leadership skills, we should absolutely be doing. And organizations should be recognizing that fact and investing in the development of their leaders. There's just not enough done. I saw it throughout my career. I saw a number of failed or failing leaders, some very successful ones, but there can be a tendency in organizations for people to become leaders without sufficient training just because they've been good at the previous role. I mean, one has to be agile. The style has to change, and it would be a very, very dull world if everybody only had one style and did that. And frankly, and you've seen it. People around here have seen it. Mediations and negotiation in mediations are really successful if somebody just sticks to one style. I mean, the really skillful negotiators are those who can adapt, they're agile, and that they can shift according to the situation. And the really skillful mediators are those who can create the space for that to happen and encourage people into that and shepherd the group dynamics in that way. I don't think it was a light bulb moment. It was more of a drip. Don't get me wrong. I love litigation. I really enjoyed the cut and thrust. I enjoyed the adrenaline, the feeling of a successful hearing, a successful trial result. But I also, having been on the buy side for 27 years, I recognise that actually litigation is expensive, it's time consuming, and it can be pretty uncertain. Even with a really good case, there's always the litigation, the trial risk associated with it. So far better from the client's perspective, far better to resolve the disputes in a more civilized, a cheaper and a quicker fashion. And I think over time, I kind of realized that. And I enjoyed that. And I enjoy, as much as I enjoy the cut and thrust and the adrenaline of the litigation, I love doing a deal and actually resolving dispute, or even better, avoiding one in the first place. Because one or two of the things I've done since I left Goldman have been helping people before they're into litigation. So just facilitating meetings and chairing meetings for people to air issues. And if we can actually avoid the dispute in the first place, that's even better. When I was at Goldman, probably 80% of the litigators in my team, of their time, was spent avoiding rather than dealing with actual litigation. And so there was a very, very, very much a focus on that. So getting involved in issues as they were starting to become a bit contentious very early on and not letting them get to that point of litigation. And I think a lot of organizations have a similar approach. It is important. There will always be disputes. There will always be conflict. We'll never be able to avoid that because of human nature, politics, geopolitical issues, all of that, and competitive commercial issues. There will always be that. And that's where mediation can come in and be helpful at an early stage. And I think one of the things that attracted me about CEDR is actually its role in publicizing that and dealing with, making sure the politicians know about this, making sure the judges know about this, and going out to all the organizations, all the commercial organizations, and providing this service so fewer and fewer get into litigation. I've been fortunate enough over the years to chair a number of boards and committees, and I always felt in that context, and it's true also just in the normal work environment, that actually a bit of friction is a very good thing, but it has to be carefully controlled. And what you need somebody who could be a kind of good shepherd of that group, to avoid the groupthink and the echo chamber tendency of groups. So bringing friction into it, I think, is a good thing. And yeah, those mediation skills, I think, help modify that sort of environment. I think it is that helping people. I've spent a career being very antagonistic with parties, and just a lot of fighting. And I like the idea now of helping people resolve their disputes in a different way, ending the disputes. But also a big part of my time at Goldman was managing teams and I really enjoyed bringing people on and took a lot of satisfaction. It sounds slightly off, but a lot of satisfaction if people were moved on to other roles, because it meant that they were desired, they'd been trained well, they were good at their role. And the coaching brings that. And I think there's huge synergies in coaching mediation. And I think, a good coach and a good mediator create an environment for the warring parties or the coaching client really to reflect on their position, reflect on their motives and their goals, and get a greater understanding of how to pursue those and get to the end that they're aiming for, and using the mediator and the coach, I think, really has to use a lot of the listening skills that we learned on the CEDR course. I think really listening, active listening, so paying really detailed attention to the people in the room to create that environment for them to grow as a coaching client or to resolve dispute as a mediation party. Better ask my clients, but I would like to think that I'm seen as somebody who does certainly listen and listens very, very carefully, but also challenges. I think in both the coaching and the mediation situation, it's very important to challenge people's thinking and hold them accountable. So I think probably a combination of those two. The faculty here is outstanding, and so you're in the room. You're a handful of students learning about this from people who are really experienced and really good at what they do, as well as teaching it. And so there's a lot of experience there to tap into. And I absolutely get that the role playing it's a distillation of a lot of real life situations that these people have faced. And so it's preparing us for situations that we will likely face when we go out as mediators. And so we're far less likely to be blindsided by something that we just never encountered. So absolutely, I can see the importance of it, and it's very good at that. But as I said, it's not my comfort zone. I'm starting to expand into mediations overseas. That's quite interesting. So different ways of mediating. So, for example, I'm talking to a French client at the moment, and they very much don't have the concept of a day or 2 days mediation. They approach it from the beginning that this will be a series of meetings over a month, and that's not something I'd encountered before. But that's quite interesting to see how different countries approach their mediation, and of course different systems, different legal systems are at different stages. In that we're pretty advanced in the UK in our use of mediation, but others are coming up the curve a bit behind us, and seeing those stages is quite interesting.